Developing skills for the TOEFL iBT. Listening. Copyrights 2008 Compass Publishing. All rights reserved. Preview test.
You will listen to 2 lectures and 1 conversation. You will hear each lecture and conversation 1 time. After each listening passage, you will answer some questions about it. Most questions are worth 1 point, but some questions are worth more than 1 point. The directions indicate how many points you may receive. You will have 15 to 20 minutes to both listen and answer the questions. The questions ask about the main idea and supporting details. Some questions ask about a speaker's purpose or attitude. You may take notes while you listen. You may use your notes to help you answer the questions. Your notes will not be scored. In some questions you will see this icon. This means you will hear part of the lecture or conversation again. When you are ready, press Continue.
Listen to a lecture in an anatomy class.
Yesterday, we only started to talk about chemoreceptors. Does everybody remember what chemoreceptors are? Let me give you a quick definition just to make sure that we're all clear on this. Okay, so chemoreceptors are the group of cells that act kind of as translators for chemical stimuli. So when your body is exposed to certain chemicals, the chemoreceptors prompt your body to react, respond, or both. Does that make sense? What I want to talk about specifically today is the role of chemoreceptors in 2 human sensory systems, the olfactory and the gustatory systems. Okay then, first, the olfactory system is what allows you to perceive smells. Smelling is important. I mean, it gives us a way to tell if there's food close by or if food has gone bad. Anyway, the chemoreceptors used for smelling are called distance chemoreceptors. Humans have millions and millions of chemoreceptors that are located in the nose. If you want to get really technical, the receptors are all actually located in a certain part of the nose called the epithelium. In humans, it's about 2 inches long. It's actually by studying the epithelium that scientists can tell if an animal has a good sense of smell or not. Let's consider 2 examples, humans and dogs. Humans have about 16 square centimeters of the epithelium covered with chemoreceptors. Dogs, meanwhile, have 150 square centimeters. So what can we guess by that? That's right, that dogs have a much better sense of smell than humans. Anyway, when odor molecules pass through the nose, they bind to the receptors. The receptors transduce. Transduce. When you transduce something, you change it from one form to another. So yeah, the receptors transduce the chemical stimuli into electrical signals that can be understood by the brain. The brain can then interpret what the odor is, tell how concentrated the odor is, or even match up the odor with a memory of an odor smelled in the past. So that's how chemoreceptors work in the olfactory system. In the gustatory system, which allows us to taste, it's a little different. Again, being able to taste is very important to humans. Before we all were able to get our food at the supermarket, humans used to have to go out and hunt for food. The sense of taste allowed humans to tell if a food was nutritious or bad for them. Moving on, I'm sure you all know that our tongues are covered with thousands of taste buds. There are about 10,000 taste buds in the human mouth. Scientists have learned that different buds are able to discern or to figure out different types of flavors. Well, that's actually where the chemoreceptors are found. See, there are 2 kinds of cells that make up each taste bud. The supporting cell usually forms the outside of the bud. Then the gustatory cell, which is the chemoreceptor, is found in the center of the bud. Unlike the chemoreceptors in the nose, the chemoreceptors found on the tongue are called direct chemoreceptors. There are 5 different kinds of receptors on the tongue. Each one is able to perceive salt, sweet, bitter, sour, or savory flavors. Interestingly, each receptor has a distinct way of communicating with the brain.
1. What is the main topic of the lecture? 2. Why does the professor say this?
Humans have millions and millions of chemoreceptors that are located in the nose. If you want to get really technical, the receptors are all actually located in a certain part of the nose called the epithelium.
Three. Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
Humans have about 16 square centimeters of the epithelium covered with chemoreceptors. Dogs, meanwhile, have 150 square centimeters. So what can we guess by that?
Why does the professor say this?
So what can we guess by that?
4. According to the professor, how is the sense of taste important to humans? 5. What is the professor's attitude toward buying food at the supermarket? 6. How does the professor organize the information presented in the lecture? 'Listen to a lecture in an art history class.
We've been talking a lot about the Spanish Renaissance in art. You probably remember that this movement dates back to the 1500s. Today, I want to give you a profile, I guess, of one of the most well-known painters of this period, El Greco.
Wait a minute, but wasn't El Greco kind of an exception in terms of his ideology and style? I thought that he wasn't even popular at the time.
That's absolutely right, but I bring him up for two reasons. One, because he was an extraordinarily gifted artist, and two, because his work exhibits features that popped up in art later. So consider this a preview of sorts. Now, you said that ideologically he was very different from his contemporaries. Why don't we talk about that? What were some of the beliefs that informed El Greco's work?
Well, first of all, his work was mostly informed by his imagination and intuition, and he thought it was important to depict subjects in ways other than what was expected.
Great point. I think that element is probably best exemplified in the way he portrayed his subjects as stretched out.
You know, I read something interesting about that once, about the elongation of El Greco's subjects. It was an article by this art historian. He proposed that the reason that El Greco's subjects looked all stretched out like that is probably because he had astigmatism. Is that true, or were the elongated figures really part of El Greco's style?
Well, for those of you who don't know, astigmatism is a condition that affects the eyes. Very simply put, it can cause objects to appear more stretched out than they actually are. Anyway, that's an interesting theory. I know it seems like astigmatism could account for El Greco's style, but if you think about it for a minute, you'll see that it doesn't really make any sense. See, the astigmatism theory recognizes that the subject will be seen differently, but it fails to acknowledge that the artist with the astigmatism would also see the canvas and the room and really everything with the same distortion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I can see that. But still, to me, it made a lot of sense actually looking at El Greco's paintings. I mean, even if everything is distorted, it would still produce that effect, wouldn't it?
Not exactly. Here, let me give you an example. According to the astigmatism theory, the reason that the subjects in El Greco's work are stretched out is because that is how he actually perceived them due to astigmatism. But consider a work where the subject is lying down horizontally. If he were, in fact, just painting what he saw, the subject would appear to be quite thick. Instead, his subjects are never really elongated horizontally. It's more like they're stretched out vertically. That effect in his work is really just a result of his desire to get away from the tradition of having perfect measurements and proportions.
7. What are the speakers mostly discussing? 8. Why does the professor explain the effects of astigmatism on perception? 9. According to the lecture, what element of El Greco's work demonstrates his ideology? 10. Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
See, the astigmatism theory recognizes that the subject will be seen differently, but it fails to acknowledge that the artist with the astigmatism would also see the canvas and the room, and really everything with the same distortion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess I can see that. But still, to me, it made a lot of sense actually looking at El Greco's paintings. I mean, even if everything is distorted, it would still produce that effect, wouldn't it?
Why does the professor say this?
I mean, even if everything is distorted, it would still produce that effect, wouldn't it?
(11) What is the professor's opinion of El Greco as an artist? 12. Based on information from the lecture, which characteristics describe El Greco's style? Place a check mark in the correct box. Listen to a conversation between a student and a university employee.
Hi, I'm looking for someone who can help me with my identification card.
I can help you. What's the problem? Is it not letting you into buildings anymore? You know, sometimes if you leave the card close to a magnet, the card readers can't read them.
No, actually, I seem to have misplaced my card somewhere, but I'm almost sure that it's in my room somewhere. I just don't have the time to look for it now because I have a laboratory session all afternoon. So I was wondering if I could have a temporary card or something until I find my own.
Oh, I'm so sorry, but we can't issue temporary cards. It's just too risky to have that many ID cards circulating around campus, especially since we use them for so many things. I mean, think about it. You use it to get into buildings, to eat at the cafeteria. Anyway, we'll just have to get you a new one.
Oh, but I really don't want to have to pay for a new one if I know that I haven't really lost mine.
I'm really sorry, but you'll have to purchase a replacement. The bright side is that if this is the first time you've had to replace your card, it will only cost you $5. After that, it's $10 if you have to replace it again.
See, the thing is, I've already lost it twice, so it's $10. It just kills me, and I know it's not lost this time. It has to be somewhere in my room.
To be honest, you don't have much of a choice. Once a card is reported missing, we are required by university policy to deactivate it. Really, it's just what we have to do to protect the students.
Okay, I guess I can see that. What information do you need to deactivate it?
Just your name.
It's Olivia Bentham.
Let me just put that in the system here. Okay, Ms. Bentham, your old card is now deactivated. Now, let me just make you a new one and you can be on your way.
Thanks. So it's $10.
That's right. You can either pay with cash or put it on your student account.
I'll just pay for it now. My parents will freak if they find out I've lost it again.
13. What are the speakers mainly discussing? 14. Why does the student visit the office? 15. According to the conversation, why can't the student have a temporary ID card? 16. Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
I'm really sorry, but you'll have to purchase a replacement. The bright side is that if this is the first time you've had to replace your card, it will only cost you $5. After that, it's $10 if you have to replace it again.
See, the thing is, I've already lost it twice, so it's $10. It just kills me, and I know it's not lost this time. It has to be somewhere in my room.
Why does the student say this?
See, the thing is, I've already lost it twice, so it's $10. It just kills me.
(17) What can be inferred about the student?